There's a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from working 80-hour weeks at a prestigious law firm. It's bone deep, the kind that coffee can't fix and sleep barely touches. After 8 months at Moretti and Associates, I'd become intimately familiar with it. But tonight, Friday night at 5:45 p.m., I was allowing myself something radical. I was leaving at a reasonable hour. I had plans. An actual date with an actual human who wasn't a client or colleague or case file. Marco Ferretti had asked me to dinner after we'd run into each other at a legal conference last week. He was handsome, successful, charming. And most importantly, he was safe. Uncomplicated. The kind of guy who wouldn't make my heart race or my hands shake or my carefully constructed professional life implode. Unlike my boss, I was packing my briefcase, checking my reflection in the small mirror I kept in my desk drawer, when his voice came from the doorway. Going somewhere? Luca Moretti, senior partner, youngest in the firm's history at 33. 6'2" of lean, dangerous elegance wrapped in Tom Ford suits. The man who'd haunted my thoughts for 8 months despite every professional instinct screaming at me to stop. I looked up to find him leaning against my office door frame, arms crossed, watching me with those intense dark eyes that seemed to see through every carefully maintained barrier. "I have plans tonight," I said, keeping my voice professional even though my pulse had already kicked up. "Dinner. I mentioned it yesterday. With Marco Ferretti." Not a question. A statement delivered with absolutely no inflection. Of course he knew. Luca knew everything that happened in this firm. I'd mentioned the date casually to Julia, the paralegal who'd become my closest friend here. Somehow the information had traveled. "Yes. With Marco." I zipped my briefcase with more force than necessary. "Is there something you need, Mr. Moretti?" The formality was deliberate. I'd learned early on to maintain professional distance with Luca. Calling him by his first name felt too intimate, too dangerous. Actually, yes. He moved into my small office, and immediately the space felt smaller. He had that effect, taking up all the air, commanding all the attention without even trying. "The Santoro case. The evidence you found yesterday. We need to discuss strategy tonight." My stomach sank. The Santoro case. The shipping company accused of fraud. The evidence I'd discovered buried in 10-year-old financial records that could win our case, but revealed something I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Tonight? I tried to keep the frustration out of my voice. "Can it wait until tomorrow?" "No." He moved closer, and I caught the scent of his cologne, something expensive and cedar-scented that I'd learned to associate with late nights and professional torture. "The decision needs to be made now. How we use that evidence determines the entire direction of the case." "I understand that, but my reservation is at 7:30 and I still need to go home and change." "Cancel your plans for tonight." His voice was calm, authoritative, the tone he used in court when he was about to destroy opposing counsel. "You're needed here." It wasn't a request. It was an order. I stared at him, frustration warring with something else I didn't want to examine too closely. "Mr. Moretti, this is the 3rd time this month you've asked me to work late when I had plans." "Is it?" His jaw ticked, the only tell that I'd struck a nerve. I hadn't noticed. He was lying. We both knew it. The first time had been 2 weeks ago when I'd planned to meet some university friends for drinks. The second had been last Friday when I'd bought tickets to the opera. Both times, Luca had manufactured urgent work that couldn't wait. Both times, I'd canceled my plans and stayed late, working in his office until midnight while he paced and dictated and occasionally looked at me with an intensity that made it hard to breathe. "Why tonight?" I asked quietly, setting down my briefcase. "Why is it so urgent that this conversation can't wait until morning?" He stared at me for a long moment, and I watched something shift in his expression. The careful control he always maintained, in court, in meetings, in every interaction, fractured slightly. I saw heat flash in his eyes. Frustration. Something darker that made my pulse jump. "Because I can't stand the thought of you sitting across from him at dinner," he said finally, his voice low and rough. "Because every time I imagine you smiling at him the way you never smile at me, I want to destroy something. Because you're needed here, Elena. Not for the case. For me." The confession hung in the air between us like smoke. I couldn't breathe.
Couldn't think.
8 months of carefully maintained professional distance, of suppressing every inappropriate thought, of pretending I didn't feel the electricity that crackled between us every time we were in the same room. All of it shattered with those words. You. My voice came out barely a whisper. What? You heard me. He moved closer, backing me against my desk. I've been professional for 8 months. I've maintained appropriate boundaries. I've pretended I didn't notice the way you bite your lip when you're thinking, or the way you tuck your hair behind your ear when you're nervous, or the way you look at me sometimes when you think I'm not watching. Mr. Moretti. Luca. His hand came up, fingers grazing my jaw. Say my name, Elena. Just once. This is insane, my mind screamed. He's your boss. You're a junior associate. This is every HR violation imaginable. But my body didn't care about HR violations. Luca, I whispered. The sound of his name on my lips seemed to break something in him. His hand slid to the back of my neck, pulling me closer until there was barely any space between us. Cancel your date, he said quietly. Stay here. With me. Let me show you why you should choose me instead of him. We can't, you're a senior partner. I know what I am. His thumb brushed across my lower lip. I know all the reasons this is a terrible idea. I've spent 8 months listing them. But watching you plan a date with someone else, imagining you with him, his voice roughened. I can't do it anymore. My phone buzzed. Marco, probably confirming our reservation. I have to tell him something. I managed. Tell him you're working late. Tell him something came up. Tell him whatever you need to. Luca's eyes were dark with promise. But stay. I should have said no. Should have grabbed my briefcase, walked out, gone on that safe, uncomplicated date with Marco. Should have protected my career and my sanity and my heart. Instead, I pulled out my phone and texted Marco. So sorry. Work emergency. Need to reschedule. His response was immediate, no problem. Next week? I didn't answer. Just set down the phone and looked at Luca. I canceled. The satisfaction in his smile was absolute. Good. He stepped back, and I could breathe again. But the air between us was still charged with everything unsaid. The Santoro evidence, he said, his voice returning to something almost professional. My office. We need to discuss what you found. He walked out, and I followed on shaking legs, trying to process what had just happened. Luca's corner office was everything mine wasn't. Massive. Luxurious. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Duomo. Original artwork on the walls. A desk that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. He closed the door behind us, and suddenly the professional pretense felt very thin. Show me the evidence, he said, moving to his desk. I pulled up the files on my laptop, projecting them onto a screen. Financial records from 10 years ago. Money transfers. Shell companies. A pattern of fraud so obvious I couldn't believe no one had noticed before. This proves the Santoro Shipping Company is innocent of the current charges, I said, falling into the familiar rhythm of legal analysis. The fraud they're accused of, the environmental violations, the falsified shipping manifests, none of it connects to their actual operations. But, Luca prompted, his eyes on the screen. But it reveals a different fraud. One from a decade ago. Money laundering through shell companies. And the person who set it up, I pulled up another document, highlighted a signature, was the lawyer who represented them at the time. Luca went very still. Who? I met his eyes. Your father. Antonio Moretti. He was their attorney 10 years ago. These transfers went through accounts he controlled. He's the one who committed fraud, not the current owners. The silence stretched. I watched Luca's expression carefully, saw the moment he processed the implications. You've known this since yesterday, he said quietly. Yes. And you didn't tell anyone. I wanted to talk to you first. I closed the laptop. Because using this evidence wins our case. But it also exposes your father to criminal charges. Money laundering.
Fraud.
Maybe more depending on what the authorities find when they investigate. And you're asking me what to do. His laugh was bitter. whether to sacrifice my father to win a case. I'm asking you to help me make the ethical decision. I moved around the desk, closer to him, because I could bury this. Claim I never found it. Win the case using other evidence. No one would ever know. I would know. He stood, moved to the windows, hands in his pockets. You would know. Your father made his choices. Luca's voice was flat. 10 years ago, he committed fraud. He hid it well, but not well enough. And now the evidence exists. What happens to him is a consequence of his actions, not yours. But he's your father, the founding partner of this firm. If this comes out, the firm survives. I survive. He faces consequences he's avoided for a decade. Luca turned to face me, his expression hard. Use the evidence, Elena. Win the case. Do it ethically. Let my father deal with what he's done. I stared at him. You're sure? I'm sure. He moved closer. But I need you to understand what you're asking me to give up. If you expose my father, he'll be arrested. The firm's reputation will take a hit. And he stopped, jaw ticking. What? I prompted. I'll have to leave. Step down as partner. Distance myself from the situation. His eyes met mine. Which means I won't be your boss anymore. The implication hung between us. Is that why you're telling me to use the evidence? I asked quietly. To remove the professional barrier between us?
No.
I'm telling you to use it, because it's the right thing to do. His hand came up, cupping my face. But I won't pretend I'm not relieved that it solves our other problem. What problem? The one where I want you, and can't have you, because you work for me. The one where every firm policy prevents me from touching you the way I've been imagining for 8 months. His thumb brushed across my cheekbone. If I'm not your boss anymore, if I leave this firm, those barriers disappear. My breath caught. You'd leave Moretti and Associates? The firm your father built? Your entire career? For you? His forehead pressed against mine.
Yes.
Without hesitation. This is insane, my mind whispered again. But my heart was pounding with something that felt like hope. What are you proposing? I asked. I'm proposing that you use that evidence. Win the Santoro case. Be brilliant. And when my father's fraud comes to light, I step down from the partnership. His hands framed my face. Then I start my own firm.
Smaller.
More selective. And I take you with me as named partner. Equal footing. No power imbalance. No firm policies between us. You've thought about this. I've thought about nothing else since yesterday when you told me you found something. His smile was rueful. I knew it would involve my father the moment you said it was in decade-old files. He was sloppy back then. Arrogant. I've been waiting for this to surface for years. And you want me to be the one to expose it. I want you to make the ethical choice, whether that destroys my father or not. His eyes were intense on mine. I won't let you compromise your integrity for me, Elena. Not even if it costs me everything. The words settled something in my chest. Because this was what I'd been looking for in 8 months of working with Luca Moretti, proof that underneath the ruthless attorney and demanding boss was someone with actual principles. Okay, I whispered. Okay. I'll use the evidence. I'll win the case ethically. And when your father faces consequences, I met his eyes. I'll go with you. To the new firm. As your partner. The smile that crossed his face was pure relief. You're sure? I'm terrified.
But yes.
I'm sure. He kissed me then, and it was nothing like the professional restraint I'd imagined. This was 8 months of suppressed want, of careful distance, of pretending we didn't feel the electricity between us. His hands in my hair, his mouth claiming mine with an intensity that made my knees weak. When he finally pulled back, I was gasping. I've wanted to do that since your first day, he said roughly. Since you walked into my office for your interview and looked at me like you weren't impressed by the reputation or the corner office or any of it. I was impressed, I admitted. I was just trying not to show it. You failed. His smile was dark. I saw the way you looked at me. The way you still look at me when you think I'm not paying attention. I've spent 8 months wanting you and telling myself I couldn't have you. And now I'm done pretending. He pulled me closer. Use that evidence, Selena. Change everything. And then be mine. Officially. Completely. The next week was chaos. I presented the evidence to the senior partners. Watched their faces as they realized what it meant. Antonio Moretti, retired founding partner, Luca's father, had committed fraud a decade ago. The proof was irrefutable. The firm had no choice. They reported it to the authorities. Launched an internal investigation. Started damage control. Antonio was arrested on a Friday morning. White-collar crime, they called it. He'd likely get a few years in minimum security, lose his law license, pay massive fines. But he'd survive. The firm's reputation took a hit. Clients got nervous. The press had a field day. And Luca resigned. He called a meeting with all the associates, his expression carefully neutral as he explained. Due to my father's actions and the conflict of interest it creates, I'm stepping down from my partnership effective immediately. I'll be starting my own practice, focusing on corporate litigation. Anyone who wishes to join me is welcome to discuss opportunities. His eyes found mine across the conference room. A question. After the meeting, I went to his office, soon to be someone else's office. He was packing files into boxes, his movements efficient despite the obvious tension in his shoulders. "Hey," I said from the doorway. He looked up, and something in his expression softened. "Hey yourself. Come to say goodbye. Come to say yes." I stepped inside, closed the door.
To the partnership.
To the new firm.
To you.
He crossed to me in 3 strides, pulled me into his arms. "You're sure? This is a risk, Elena. New firm, uncertain client base, my father's scandal following us. I'm sure." I looked up at him. "We won the Santoro case. Ethically. Brilliantly. Other clients will come. And your father's scandal isn't your burden to carry. The firm's name will be Moretti and Bianchi," he said. "Equal partners. Equal say. Equal everything. Moretti and Bianchi." I repeated, testing it. "I like it."
Good.
"Because I'm not letting you change your mind." His hand slid into my hair. "You're mine now. Professionally and personally. No more barriers. No more pretending." "What about firm policy?" I asked, smiling. "Our firm policy is whatever we decide it is. And I decide that the senior partners are allowed to date." His smile was wicked. Strongly encouraged even. He kissed me, and this time there was no professional restraint, no fear of crossing lines. Just us, finally free to be what we'd been dancing around for 8 months. 3 months later, Moretti and Bianchi opened its doors. Small office. Selective client list. But within weeks, we had more work than we could handle. Turns out a senior partner with Luca's reputation and a junior partner who'd just won the Santoro case were a formidable team. "We should hire associates," Luca said one evening, reviewing contracts at his desk while I worked on a brief at mine. Our offices were side by side, connected by a door we kept open. "Probably," I agreed, not looking up. "Someone to handle the research. The grunt work." Someone young and brilliant and overworked. I finally looked up to find him watching me with a small smile. "Someone like you 8 months ago?" I asked. "Exactly like you 8 months ago." He stood, moved to my office, perched on the edge of my desk. "Except I promise not to fall in love with them and destroy their career." "You didn't destroy my career. You gave me a better one. I made you expose my father to criminal charges. You gave me the choice to do the ethical thing despite the personal cost. That's different." I set down my pen, and I do it again. Even knowing it would lead to all this? He gestured around our small office. The uncertainty? The risk? Especially knowing it led to this. I stood, moved into the circle of his arms. "We built something, Luca. Together. Something that's ours. That's worth more than a corner office at your father's firm. You're worth more than a corner office." His hand cupped my face. "You're worth everything I gave up and more." Smooth talker. "Only with you." He kissed me softly. "Have dinner with me tonight. Actual dinner. At a restaurant. Like a real date. As opposed to our usual dinner? Our usual dinner is takeout at our desks at 11 p.m. I'm proposing something radical. Reservations. Actual chairs. Food that comes on plates instead of in containers. I laughed. That does sound radical. Say yes. Yes. He kissed me again, and I thought about that Friday night 3 months ago. About standing in my small office planning a safe, uncomplicated date with Marco. About Luca appearing in my doorway with that command that changed everything. Cancel your plans for tonight. You're needed here. At the time, it had felt like jealousy. Possession. A boss overstepping every professional boundary. But looking back, I understood. It had been a confession. A breaking point. The moment when 8 months of careful control finally shattered. And yes, it had been about more than work. It had been about him finally admitting he needed me. Not as an associate or a brilliant legal mind or someone to work late. As his equal. His partner.
His.
What are you thinking? Luca asked, his thumb brushing across my lower lip. That I'm glad I canceled my date with Marco. So am I. His smile was smug. Though I do feel slightly guilty about manufacturing that work emergency. It wasn't entirely manufactured. We did need to discuss the evidence.
True.
But I could have waited until Monday. He pulled me closer. I just couldn't stand the thought of you with him. I know. I kissed him softly. Your eyes gave you away. Your needed here was professional. But the way you looked at me was pure possession. I'm not apologizing for that. I'm not asking you to. I met his eyes. I'm just saying I saw it. Even then, I knew it was about more than work. And yet you stayed. Because I wanted to. I admitted what I'd been too afraid to say 3 months ago. I only said yes to Marco because I was tired of waiting for you to notice me. Tired of being professional. I wanted you to see me as something other than your junior associate. I saw you, he said quietly. I've been seeing you since day one. I just didn't know how to tell you without crossing every line. So, you manufactured work emergencies. 3 times. Yes. He didn't look remotely apologetic. And I'd do it again. Well, you don't have to anymore. I gestured around our office. No more manufactured emergencies. No more professional barriers. Just us.
Just us, he agreed.
Partners in every sense. Standing there in our small office, built on the rubble of his father's scandal and our mutual willingness to do the right thing despite the cost, I realized something. This is insane had become this is everything. Luca had ordered me to cancel my plans that Friday night. Had confessed feelings that violated every professional boundary. Had offered to give up his entire career for the chance to be with me ethically. And I'd said yes. To all of it. Because sometimes the insane choice is the right one. Sometimes the boss who orders you to stay late is actually offering you everything. Sometimes destroying what you have is the only way to build something better. I love you, I said quietly. His eyes darkened. Say it again. I love you, Luca Moretti. Even though you're jealous and possessive and you manipulated me into staying late that night. I love you too, Elena Bianchi. Even though you almost went on a date with someone else and gave me the worst night of my life imagining it.
It was never really about him.
I know. He kissed me, soft and sure.
It was always about me.
About us. About what we could be if we were brave enough to risk everything. And we were. And we are, he corrected. We're still risking everything. Every day. Building this firm. Being together. Choosing each other. Best risk I ever took, I said. Best command I ever gave, he replied. We both laughed, and then he was kissing me again and I was kissing him back, and somewhere in the city Marco was probably on a date with someone else, someone safe and uncomplicated. And I was here, with my partner, my equal, my love. Exactly where I was needed. Exactly where I wanted to be.